Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the Zelda Dungeon video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Before I get started, two things. First, so I'll probably be following up on that with a video once I beat the game with like a video on it or whatever. And also, we have a Twitter page on Zelda Dungeon now, so you should check that out if you've got a Twitter account, or maybe you should get one and maybe follow us. So yeah. All right. First question. Casey Smith asks, what's your favorite moment out of all the Zelda games? Actually, mine would probably be, in the Wind Waker, you know? Where you, after you first go to the Forsaken Fortress, and you find, you know, Auril, your sister, and then you get kicked out by the bird, but he, like, takes you up to Ganon, and you see Ganon, and it's playing that really cool music, and it's like a spin on the Ganon theme, and then Ganon, like, goes... and, you know, he throws you into the ocean. I thought that was a great moment because, you know, despite the fact, you know, every game has Ganon pretty much, but despite that, that was one moment where you knew it was Ganon, you knew the whole game was going to have Ganon, but then suddenly they throw that moment in, and it suddenly just felt so epic having Ganon again. It felt like, I was left thinking, like, who is that guy again? When I hadn't done that in years because it was just always Ganon. So that moment really, I think, sold Ganon as an awesome villain again. I think Wind Waker was actually quite impressive story-wise, especially with Ganon, and that was one of the greatest moments. It just, that sent tingles down my spine, and no other moment in the series I think has really been able to do that. Be sure to tell me what your guys' favorite moment was. Mental Teen asks, relating to using bottles to defend against Ganondorf, what did you think about using the fishing rod to distract Ganondorf and Twilight Princess? How do you think that is related to Ganondorf's true power and maybe how good of a villain he really is? Following up from, the last question. Well, I actually didn't know about that until I received this question from actually a few people. I went and looked it up and found out about it, and I have to say that's pretty hilarious. You cast your rod, and he looks at it, and you can just hit him because he's distracted. Again, I think it doesn't really have much relevance to canon. I don't think you should even consider that it really happened as far as the story is concerned, because it's really just an Easter egg. That one I don't think is necessarily a bug. I think they might have actually put that one in on purpose. Perhaps we will see a running tradition of Ganondorf being easily distracted or defeated by odd items. I'd love to see that as a consistency in the series, actually, and I think that's pretty funny. Sirsax asks, what do you think of the theory that the Hero's Shade is the Stalfos version of Adult Link, the form he obtained while traveling back through the Lost Woods without a fairy? Actually, I mean, not to be a creep, you know, but I actually kind of think that theory is a bit of hogwash, no offense, because, you know, I don't think there's a lot of basis for that. When they said that in Ocarina of Time, people would become lost in the woods. I don't think it said anything about fairies, but just became lost in the woods. That they become Stalfos. It was kind of this odd thing, like it was this little fairy tale thing. It didn't seem like it was something that they really meant to be that important. They were just saying it. So I think that, you know, there's no reason to think that Link, or the Hero Shade, sorry, in Ocarina of Time, I mean, Twilight Princess, whoa, epic fail, the Hero Shade in Twilight Princess is anything other than just a dead guy. I think he's just a ghost. I mean, they even do this spirit world stuff where he turns into the wolf and you go to that other realm and he does all the trippy splitting into multiple copies thing. I don't think there's anything reason to think he's anything than just a ghost. I don't think he's a Stalfos, and even if you know, I just don't think there's a reason to think that. The theories that he could be the Hero of Time are plausible, but that one I don't think has much basis, and is almost disproven in a lot of ways. But that's just me. That's another widely debated thing, and it'll be interesting to hear what you guys think. PS2 Pro 2 Sora asks, based on theories or what you know about the games, where do you think Twilight Princess is on the timeline? You know, that's the thing. Twilight Princess was sort of an odd game as far as the timeline is concerned, because, you know, it's pretty obviously on the child timeline where Ganon never rose to power and was stopped. Yet at the same time, there's almost things that imply it's supposed to be on the other timeline or doesn't even acknowledge a split. Like how they seem to be constantly making references to the Hero of Time, but if it's on the child timeline, there can be no Hero of Time. He never existed. It's very unusual in that way, and I think ultimately all we can say about Twilight Princess for absolute certain is that it takes place a long time after Ocarina of Time. if you're going to, I mean, it's plausible that the split is still there, considering they've acknowledged the split almost in reference to Twilight Princess, or come close to it anyway. So you can probably say that it's supposed to be on the child timeline, maybe so and so long, some amount of time as the Wind Waker was after Ocarina of Time. But that's all we can really say. It's an odd duck on the timeline, in my opinion. And I'm no timeline expert, so, I'd like to hear what you guys think. Komali asks, could the Great Deku Tree in the Wind Waker be the grown-up Deku Tree sprout from Ocarina of Time? Pretty much has to, because there wasn't two Deku Trees floating around. I mean, the old Deku Tree was dead, so it wasn't him. And then there was that sprout, so it pretty much has to be him. I mean, I think that's pretty much a definite, and there's no debate there. I don't even know if there is debate. That would be interesting, and in my opinion, pretty hilarious, actually. Gabriel Bustas asks, there are 3 Oracle girls in the Minish Cap, so are there 3 houses for each? Actually, no. There are 3 girls, but there are only 2 houses. Essentially, you have to choose which 2 of the 3 you want to give a house to. And essentially, that's choosing which of the 3 power-ups you want access to. I think Din gives you, extra attack power. I think Nehru gives you extra defensive power, and Furore gives you both, but less of both. Basically, you have to talk to, I believe, Furore to actually trigger this event, but after each house is built, you can actually talk to any of the 3 and give them the house. It's your choice. But you can only get 2, so you gotta choose wisely. It's an odd thing, but it's interesting. Diablo asks, do you think that the tribe mentioned in Majora's Mask who created it for hex rituals was in fact the Twili? Well, I think it could be. There's talk of theories like that, and they're interesting. I don't think they intended it as such, but they might have intended it afterwards. Because, the Twilight, they didn't exist when Majora's Mask came out. So they definitely didn't intend it originally. But now, connecting things now, it's possible, but there's an ultimate fact you still come down to. It probably wasn't the Twilight, but rather Termina's Twilight. So, I'm not sure that makes much difference, but, it's just alternate Twilight. It could have been the same ones. They might have known how to travel, but I don't really know. I'm not sure if they created it, though. They talk about the tribe used the mask for their hexane rituals. They didn't say they created it. I have my own theories on the subject. I won't get into them now, but I don't think they created it. Maybe found it or something. I don't know. Kyle S. asks, since Miyamoto said that he was haunted by the guilt over the last 10 years by how difficult he made the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time, do you think that they will keep the dungeon the same, or do you think it will have a different layout in the 3DS version? They've said at least that they're going to make the Iron Boot switching less annoying. Since they're making changes like that, I would actually expect some changes to layout of the game and stuff like that, I would expect the game to function and be built a little differently. I don't know how different of dungeon layouts we're going to see. The dungeons might be completely different. We don't really know what kind of remake they're doing. So, since it's a remake, not just a re-release, I would expect some decent changes, nothing completely non-noteworthy. Link003 asks, based on the information that has been given, do you think that Skyward Sword is the first game on the timeline? I think probably. I mean, at least in large scale. I mean, as far as the games connect to each other, it's kind of sounding that way to me. However, I mean, we know it's before Ocarina of Time, but that's one of the earliest games on the timeline by most people's opinion. I mean, theoretically, the Minish Cap could still be first if you believe the Minish Cap is definitely first. But, that was sort of its own contained thing. It didn't really relate directly to the plot of the rest of the series. So, I think, ultimately, as far as the big connections that we're looking at, it probably is the first. Minish Cap and the Four Swords Saga kind of separated from it. MJG1229 asks, do you think that Skyward Sword will, and if it should, have the magic meter? I've talked about the magic meter before, how I really want it desperately, how I think it adds depth. I think it should have it, having that extra, element to keep track of, so you can do things. I don't think it will this time, just because we didn't see it in the screenshots. Now, that doesn't mean it won't be in the game. You might not have acquired it yet by that point. But since it was demonstrating what I think was probably later game stuff, or later game stats in an early area or whatever, than we're used to, or that you will start with, that might still mean it's not going to appear. So I don't know. Firelord803 asks, do you think they're going to make another handheld DS title that has the same concept of Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks? But if there is one, which vehicle do you want Link to have to replace the train? I don't really know. The remake thing kind of threw me off on the continuity of the DS stuff. If they're going to keep up with the remakes, I don't know what they're going to do with this 3DS thing. They might go back to doing the styles that they were doing before. I don't really know. I'm kind of at a loss to explain that. If they're going to have another vehicle, it'll probably be a flying one going with that theory, like a hot air balloon. I don't think it's going to be anything too technological. I think a balloon would make a lot of sense. Funny as hell, though. Last question. Mr. Shiny01 asks, in Phantom Hourglass, I was under the impression that the world of the Ocean King was an entirely different universe than the world that Link and Tetra came from. Would this make the world of Ocean King a flooded Termina? I know some other minor characters that look similar to that of the Wind Waker. Can you shed some light on the history of the Phantom Hourglass map? The ending of Phantom Hourglass was sort of what? In general, it confused me. Looking at it, it seems to imply that the people that was like another world, not necessarily an entirely alternate dimension, but like a self-contained smaller world, that particular section of sea that was related to the Ocean King. The people in it seemed to be real, but they weren't of our world, or Tetra's world, or Link's world, you know? That's my assessment. It's pretty weird, and it's open to a lot of theorization. Some people have drawn parallels to Link's Awakening. I don't think it's Termina, though. I think that's almost definitely not. But, yeah, that's all I can say. It was a weird ending. It's worth theorization, and I'd like to hear what you guys think. Alright, guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the email address in the description, and later.